The security camera footage was grainy, but the betrayal was crystal clear. I watched my own sister, my maid of honor, slip the wedding cash box into her oversized designer purse. But the real twist wasn't that she was stealing from me on my wedding day. The real twist was that I knew she would. My name is Candace Crawford. I'm 28 years old, and I always thought I was a good judge of character. I'm a pediatric nurse from a small town in Oregon. I trusted people, especially my family. I believed in happy endings, and today was supposed to be mine. My older sister, Bethany, stood beside me all morning, fluffing my dress and telling me how beautiful I looked. She was always the one who shined brighter, the one everyone noticed. I never minded being in her shadow. I just loved having her there, or so I thought. But for weeks, a little voice in my head had been whispering that something was wrong. Bethany kept making strange comments about how much a big wedding costs, and how lucky I was to have a fiancé like Mark, who had a good job. Her eyes would linger on the gift table. Mark thought I was being paranoid, but he trusted my gut. So, we came up with a plan. The night before the wedding, we deposited every real dollar bill and check into our bank account. Then, we filled that beautiful ornate cash box with $5,000 worth of fake, prop money. Now, standing in the little security office behind the reception hall, I watched the screen as Bethany checked to make sure no one was looking before she snatched the box. Her movements were quick, practiced. This wasn't a last-minute bad decision. This was a plan. My new husband, Mark, wrapped his arm around my shoulder. He didn't say, "I told you so," or anything like that. He just squeezed gently, his eyes full of a sad understanding. He knew this was hurting me more than any amount of stolen money ever could. What Bethany didn't know was that the fake money was a test, but it wasn't the trap. The real trap was the tiny GPS tracker I had taped to the bottom of the box. The police were already on their way, not just to her house, but to a place she would never expect. Before I reveal where that tracker led us, and the much darker secret it uncovered, I'd love to know where you are watching our story from today. And if you want to see justice served, please subscribe to the channel so you won't miss a single moment of what's coming next. Because as I turned away from that screen, my heart wasn't just broken, it was on fire. Bethany wasn't just a thief. I was about to prove to the entire world that she was a monster, and I had the one piece of evidence that would ruin her forever. Mark's hand tightened on my shoulder. "What do we do now, Candace?" he whispered. I didn't look at him. I just pulled out my phone, my fingers strangely steady as I opened the tracking app. The little blue dot representing the cash box was already moving across the map, leaving my wedding behind. To understand the coldness in my heart, we have to go back 3 months. It all started with our mother. She was in a lovely nursing home, the best we could find after she fell and broke her hip. It was expensive, but Bethany and I promised each other we would handle it together. At first, everything was fine. We split the bills, visited every weekend, and made sure Mom had her favorite flowers. But then Bethany started to struggle. She would call me crying, saying she was broke, that her car needed fixing, that her landlord was raising the rent. My heart broke for her. I was the one with the stable job and a fiancé who could help. So, I took on more shifts at the hospital, working until I was exhausted. I sent Bethany my half of the nursing home bill, plus extra to help her get by. One afternoon, I went to visit Mom alone. She was quiet, her eyes filled with a worry I had never seen before. She told me the director had paid her a visit. The payments for her care were months behind. They had sent letters, she said, but no one had responded. My blood ran cold. I had sent Bethany thousands of dollars. I immediately called her, my hand shaking as I held the phone to my ear. She swore it was a mistake, a mix-up at the bank. She promised she would go down to the nursing home first thing in the morning and sort it all out. But I knew she was lying. I could hear it in the way her voice cracked. The next morning, I went to the nursing home's billing office myself. I asked to see the payment history for my mother's account. The woman behind the desk gave me a sad look as she printed the papers. What I saw on that sheet made me feel sick. It wasn't just that Bethany hadn't paid my half. She hadn't paid her half, either. For 3 straight months, not a single dollar had been paid for our mother's care. All the money I had sacrificed for, all the extra shifts, had vanished. The question wasn't just if my sister was lying anymore. The question was why. Where did all that money go? What could be so important that she would risk our own mother's home and safety? It was a hole in my heart that I couldn't explain. And as I stood there in that security room, watching the blued on my phone move steadily across town, I knew the answer was waiting for me. The tracker wasn't just leading me to the stolen fake money. It was leading me straight into the center of my sister's dark secret. I looked at Mark, my white wedding dress feeling like a costume from another life. "We have to go," I said, my voice barely a whisper. He didn't hesitate. He just took my hand, and we walked out of our own wedding reception, leaving the sounds of laughter and music behind us. The world felt slow and blurry as we walked through the parking lot. I could see our friends and family dancing through the windows, completely unaware of the drama unfolding. They thought I was the happiest woman in the world, but I had never felt so broken and so determined in my life. In the car, Mark drove while I stared at the blinking blued on my phone. My heart pounded with every turn. The dot wasn't heading toward Bethany's apartment, or a bank, or any place that made sense. It was moving toward the old industrial part of town, a place of forgotten factories and shadows. It finally stopped. The address was for a place called Lock-Safe Storage. A self-storage facility. Why would Bethany take cash to a storage unit? I was on the phone with the police dispatcher, feeding her the address. I had already told them about the stolen nursing home funds weeks ago. This was the final piece. We parked across the street, hidden behind a large truck, just as the dispatcher told me to. I could see Bethany's car parked in front of Unit 42. A moment later, she got out. But she wasn't alone. A man got out of the passenger side, and he was holding the cash box. My stomach twisted into a knot. I thought I was prepared for anything, but I wasn't prepared for who I saw. It wasn't a boyfriend or some stranger. It was our cousin Daniel, the one who had lost his job and who our family had been helping support for months. They looked around nervously before Daniel unlocked the big metal door of the storage unit. It rolled up with a loud, rusty groan. What could they possibly be hiding in there? What secret was so big that it cost our mother's safety and my entire life savings? I watched them disappear into the darkness of the unit. The police were seconds away. I could hear the faint sound of sirens in the distance, getting closer. This was it. The moment of truth. My betrayal had a face, and now it had a secret location. But just before the first police car turned silently into the lot, Daniel and Bethany reappeared at the door of the unit. They weren't carrying boxes or valuables. They were dragging something heavy. My mind struggled to understand what I was seeing. It was a chair. And in that chair, there was a person. An old man, his mouth covered with tape and his hands tied behind his back. My sister wasn't just a thief. She was a kidnapper. For a second, the world went completely silent. Then, chaos erupted. Police cars swarmed the parking lot, their red and blue lights painting the scene in flashes of panic. Officers jumped out with guns drawn, shouting, "Police! Don't move! Put your hands in the air!" My hand flew to my mouth, a sob caught in my throat. This wasn't a movie. This was real. My sister, the girl I grew up with, was standing next to a tied-up man, frozen in the glare of the police lights. All the anger I felt was washed away by a wave of pure, terrifying shock. Through the flashing lights, I saw the police rush to the old man, carefully cutting the ropes on his wrists. Who was he? Why him? My mind raced, trying to connect the dots between the stolen nursing home money and this poor, terrified man. Nothing made any sense. As an officer put Bethany in handcuffs, her eyes scanned the parking lot and found me. I expected to see fear or sadness in her face, but there was none. She stared at me from across the lot with a look of pure, chilling hatred. It was the look of someone whose true plans had been ruined. A detective in a long coat walked over to our car, his face grim. "Are you Candace Crawford?" he asked gently. I nodded, unable to speak. "You're the one who called this in. You said you were tracking a stolen cash box. You have no idea what you just stopped." He explained that they had been investigating a series of threats made against the man who had been kidnapped. The detective's next words made the air leave my lungs. "The man you just saved," he said, "is Mr. Arthur Abernathy." The name echoed in my head. I knew that name. I had written checks to that name for months. My voice was a choked whisper. "Mr. Abernathy? The man who owns our mother's nursing home." The detective nodded slowly, his eyes watching me carefully. This was never just about paying bills. Kidnapping the owner of the nursing home was an act of desperation, an act of war. My sister wasn't just trying to get money. She was trying to get something from him. Something he had that she desperately needed. Another officer came over, holding a large evidence bag. Inside was a leather folder they had found in Bethany's car. The detective took it and pulled out a stack of papers. He held one up for me to see. "We think this is what it was all about," he said. It was a legal document. A last will and testament. It was our mother's will, but as I scanned the page, my blood turned to ice. This wasn't the will our mother had signed years ago. This one was different, and my name was nowhere on it. I stared at the signature on the fake will. It was supposed to be my mother's name, but it looked like the scratching of a child. It was clumsy and weak, nothing like my mother's elegant handwriting. "She didn't sign this," I whispered, my voice shaking. "This is a lie." The detective nodded. "We know," he said softly. "This is the missing piece we've been looking for." He put the will back in the evidence bag. The sight of my mother's name, forged by her own daughter, made me feel a deeper pain than I thought was possible. "But why?" I asked, looking from the detective to Mark, searching for an answer. "Our mother isn't a rich woman. There's the house and a little savings. Why would Bethany do all of this? The stealing, the kidnapping, for that? It doesn't make sense." The detective's eyes were sad. He explained that my cousin Daniel had huge gambling debts, and my sister had apparently been trying to help him. They were drowning in problems, and the money I sent for Mom's care was like throwing a glass of water on a house fire. Their plan was darker than I could have imagined. They had been pressuring Mr. Abernathy for weeks, trying to get him to sign papers saying our mother was mentally unwell. If he declared her unfit, Bethany could get power of attorney over her affairs. With that power, she could have walked into the bank, opened Mom's safe deposit box, destroyed the real will, and replaced it with this fake one. But Mr. Abernathy refused. He knew our mother was sharp as a tack. He told them he was going to call me and tell me what they were trying to do. That's when they panicked. That's when they decided to kidnap him. They were going to force him to sign the papers. The cash from my wedding was supposed to be the money they would use to disappear after they had secured their fake inheritance and left our mother with nothing. Suddenly, the detective paused, a new look on his face. "But there's one more thing, Candace," he said. "Something you don't know. Your sister wasn't just trying to steal a small inheritance. She was after something much, much bigger. Something we found in your mother's financial records." He explained that a secret trust fund, one set up by my father before he died, had been paying a huge sum of money into my mother's account every single year. It was a fortune I never knew existed. The money was meant to support her for the rest of her life. My head was spinning. A secret fortune? The detective leaned in, his voice low. "Here is the part your sister discovered. The trust had a special rule. The entire fortune would be immediately paid out if our mother ever left that specific nursing home." My sister wasn't just trying to steal an inheritance. She was trying to get our mother kicked out so she could cash in. Everything finally clicked into place. All the lies, the fake tears, the late-night phone calls. Bethany wasn't in trouble. She was a hunter, and she was trying to make our mother homeless to trigger a secret payday. She saw our mom not as a person, but as a locked treasure chest she was trying to break open. I stood there, my beautiful white dress feeling dirty in the flashing police lights. The joy of my wedding day was a distant memory, replaced by the cold, hard truth of my sister's greed. This wasn't a mistake she made. This was who she was. Why didn't we know about this money? I asked the detective, my voice hoarse. He explained that my father had set up the trust to be very private. He must have had his reasons. Maybe he knew something about Bethany's character that I had been blind to my entire life. The scene began to clear. They put Bethany and Daniel in the back of separate police cars. I watched my sister's face through the window as they drove away. The look of hatred was gone, replaced by something worse, a hollow emptiness. It was the face of a complete stranger. Mark gently touched my arm, bringing me back to reality. "Candace," he said softly, "what do we do now?" The answer was the only thing in the world that felt clear. "I have to see my mom," I said. "I have to see her right now." The drive to the nursing home was silent. I was still wearing my wedding dress, a strange sight for anyone driving by at nearly midnight. I should have been on my way to my honeymoon. Instead, I was driving toward the woman my sister had tried to destroy. When we arrived, the night nurse gave me a confused look but smiled when I said I couldn't end my wedding night without giving my mom a kiss. I walked down the quiet hall, the soft train of my dress whispering against the floor. My heart ached with every step. My mother was sleeping peacefully, her face calm in the soft glow of the nightlight. She looked so small and frail. A wave of fierce love washed over me. I sat in the chair beside her bed, just wanting to be near her, to protect her from the world. My eyes fell on a small, worn book on her nightstand. It was my father's old journal. I gently picked it up, running my fingers over the faded leather. A yellowed piece of paper was sticking out from between the pages, marking a spot. Curious, I pulled it out and unfolded it. It was a receipt from a pawn shop, dated 20 years ago, just 1 week after our father died. It was for the sale of my mother's diamond anniversary necklace. But the signature at the bottom wasn't my mother's. It was Bethany's. I stared at the little piece of paper. The ink faded from 20 years of being hidden away. My sister was just a teenager when she did this. When our mother was lost in her grief, crying herself to sleep every night, Bethany had stolen the last gift our father ever gave her. A memory, sharp and painful, flashed in my mind. I saw my mother weeks after the funeral, frantically searching her bedroom for that necklace. She was so sure she had just misplaced it. She blamed her own grief, her own carelessness, for losing something so precious. I remember Bethany wrapping her arms around our crying mother. "It's okay, Mom," she had said, her voice so sweet and comforting. "It's just a thing. You have your memories of Dad, and that's all that matters." Even then, she was a master of lies. My hands trembled as I opened my father's journal to the page my mother had marked. The entry was dated just 2 days before he passed away. His handwriting was weak, but his words were strong. He wrote about his deep love for our mother, and his pride in his 2 daughters. He wrote about me first. He called me his steady girl, the one with a heart full of kindness. Then, he wrote about Bethany. "I worry for her," his words read. "She has a hunger for things that sparkle. I am afraid she will never understand that the most valuable things in life don't have a price tag." I turned the page, and my breath caught in my throat. He wrote about the secret trust fund. He wasn't just setting it up to provide for our mother. He was setting it up to protect our mother from Bethany. He saw the darkness in her long before anyone else did. He knew, even back then, that Bethany would try to take everything. The rule about the nursing home was his master plan. It was his way of making sure the money was untouchable, a fortress built to keep my mother safe from her own child's greed. As I closed the journal, another piece of paper, tucked into the back cover, slipped out and fluttered onto my lap. It was a sealed envelope. On the front, in my father's handwriting, was a name I had never seen before, Elias Vance. I carefully tore it open. The letter inside was short, but the words hit me like a tidal wave. "Elias," it read. If you are reading this, it means my worst fears about Bethany have come true. Please, help Candace. She is the only one I trust to do what's right." The letter ended with a sentence that sent a shiver down my spine. "You are the only other person who knows about the second safe deposit box. The evidence she'll need is inside." A second safe deposit box. Evidence. The words bounced around in my tired brain. My father, in his final days, had laid out a secret path for me, a set of clues to a puzzle I never knew existed. He had left me a guardian I had never met, this mysterious Elias Vance. I showed the letter to Mark, his eyes wide as he read it. "Who is that?" he asked. I shook my head, the name feeling both strange and vaguely familiar, like a dream I couldn't quite remember. This night had become a maze, and my father's letter was the map. I gently kissed my mother's forehead. She stirred in her sleep but didn't wake. I made a silent vow to her right then. I would not let Bethany's poison ruin our family. I would uncover every last secret and make sure my mother was safe forever. On the drive home from the nursing home, with the sun just beginning to hint at the horizon, I searched for the name on my phone. Elias Vance. At first, nothing made sense. But when I added my father's name to the search, one result popped up. An old newspaper article. It was about my father receiving a small business award 20 years ago. The article mentioned him posing with his best friend and business partner, Elias Vance. "Uncle Eli," I whispered. A forgotten memory surfaced. A kind man with a big laugh who used to bring me candy. He moved away right after my father died. We found him. An online directory listed an E. Vance as the owner of an antique bookstore 2 towns over. It was a fragile lead, but it was the only one we had. The next morning, still numb and exhausted, we drove there, my crumpled wedding dress sitting in a heap on the back seat. The bookstore was called The Final Chapter. It was a dusty, magical place, packed from floor to ceiling with old books. An elderly man with kind eyes and a thick, white beard stood behind the counter. He looked up as the little bell on the door chimed. My heart hammered against my ribs. I walked up to the counter, clutching the letter in my hand. "Excuse me," I started, my voice barely a whisper. "My name is Candace Crawford. I'm looking for a man named Elias Vance." The old man's gaze was soft, but it felt like he could see right through me. He looked at my tired face, then down at the letter in my hand. A slow, sad smile formed on his lips. "I was his partner," he said, his voice raspy with age. He took off his glasses and polished them slowly. Then he looked directly into my eyes, and the world seemed to stop. "Your father told me this day might come," he said. "I've been waiting for you, Candace. I have the key." Elias led us into a small office in the back of the bookstore. The room smelled of old paper and leather. The walls were covered in faded photographs, and in one, a younger Elias stood laughing next to my father. Seeing my dad's smiling face made a lump form in my throat. "Your father loved you more than anything, Candace," Elias said, his voice soft. He sat down behind a large wooden desk. He also saw things clearly. He knew Bethany's hunger for money was like a disease, and he spent his last years making sure she could never hurt you or your mother. He explained the whole plan. The secret trust fund was the shield, meant to protect my mother's finances. But my father knew Bethany was clever. So he created a sword, a second safe deposit box containing undeniable proof of Bethany's long history of deceit. Elias unlocked a small drawer in his desk and pulled out a heavy brass key. "He gave this to me the day before he went into the hospital for the last time," Elias said, placing it in my hand. "But you need 2 keys to open the box." He kept the other one. My heart sank. "Where is it?" I asked. Elias gave me a small, sad smile. "He left a clue for you. He said you would find it, with his greatest treasure, one that time could never rust or fade. A riddle." I closed my eyes and tried to think like my father. What was his greatest treasure? Not his watch, not his ring. Then, the image of him sitting in his armchair, reading to me as a little girl, filled my mind. His worn-out copy of his favorite book. The story, he said, was about courage and doing the right thing, no matter what. "I know where it is," I said, a new surge of energy running through me. We raced from the bookstore, Elias telling us the box was at the downtown Citibank. We drove straight to my mother's house, the house I grew up in, the house my sister tried to steal. I ran to my father's old study and went straight to the bookshelf. I pulled out the old familiar copy of To Kill a Mockingbird. My hands were shaking as I opened the cover. Inside, a small square had been carefully cut out of the first 50 pages, creating a secret hiding spot. Lying inside was the second brass key. It was a perfect match to the one Elias had given me. I had found it. I had my father's sword. We had everything we needed to go to the bank and find the final piece of this horrible puzzle. But as I stood up, ready to leave, my phone buzzed. It was the detective. His voice was urgent. "Candace, you need to be careful," he said. "Your sister made a deal. She's talking. She just told us that your cousin Daniel wasn't her only partner." My blood ran cold. Another partner. I looked at Mark, his face a mask of concern, but my mind was spinning. The web my sister had spun was wider and darker than I ever knew. We couldn't wait. We had to get to that bank and find whatever my father had left for me. The drive to the bank felt like a chase scene from a movie. Every shadow seemed to hold a threat. Every passing car felt like it was following us. We were no longer just uncovering secrets. We were running from a ghost, an unknown enemy who could be anywhere, watching us. Elias met us in the grand lobby of the bank. His presence a small island of calm in my ocean of fear. A bank manager led the three of us down to the vault, the air growing colder with each step. The silence was broken only by the loud clanking of the giant metal door as it swung open. The manager used his key, then I stepped forward. I put the first key in, the one from Elias. Then I slid in the second key, the one from my father's book. With a heavy click, the lock opened. I pulled the long, cold metal box out and set it on the table. Inside, there was a stack of threatening letters from a loan shark, all addressed to Bethany. But underneath them was a small, old-fashioned audio recorder. My hands trembled as I pressed the play button. I heard my father's voice, weak from his illness. And then, I heard my sister's. It was a recording of Bethany, in my father's final hours, trying to get him to sign a new will. Her voice was not sad or desperate. It was cold, cruel, and demanding. I listened in horror as she told my dying father that she would get the money, no matter what it took. The recording was the ultimate proof of her darkness. But there was one last thing in the box. A single photograph. It was of Bethany and our cousin Daniel. They were at a restaurant, laughing. And sitting at the table with them, raising a glass, was my husband, Mark. In that 1 second, my entire world shattered. The fake money plan. His calm support. It was all an act. He was the other partner. He had been playing me the entire time, gaining my trust while he planned to destroy my family. My knees felt weak, and I leaned on the table to hold myself up. I slowly looked up from the photo, into Mark's eyes. The surprise on his face was real. He never expected this. He never knew my father had one last move to play. Just then, the detective stepped into the room. "It's over, Mark," he said calmly. The warning call wasn't just a warning. It was the final move in my father's trap. I walked out of that bank, leaving behind a sister, a cousin, and a man I thought I loved. But I walked out with the truth. I had saved my mother. I had honored my father. And I had finally found my own strength. Thank you for watching my story to the very end. If you believe that truth and justice should always win, please like this video, share it with someone who needs to see it, and subscribe to the channel for more stories of survival and strength.